Hello, welcome to the channel and thanks for watching, and in this video I am going to speed paint a Beast of Nurgle. Now this model has been shown on the channel before when I showed my Nurgle Demon Army kind of reveal video, and it's really just being used as a filler so that I've got a little bit more variance in terms of what points in the army I can use. And when I say speed paint, I really mean speed paint. It's Christmas week. I've done no painting all week because of work and obviously family commitments. This has been done over a course of about an hour on Saturday night and about another half an hour on Sunday morning. Literally the model is drying in its final stages as I'm doing this voiceover very early on a Sunday morning. So super speed paint, primarily contrast paints. You've already seen me put the first layer on there. So we sprayed the model black and then we sprayed it with a Wraithbone spray. Bit of a zenithal highlight type thing there where you've seen a bit of the black coming underneath the paint, so it's not pure white everywhere, so it gives a little bit extra shading. Now you've already seen the contrast paint scheme. We've done the bone over just sort of a couple of the horns and the sort of fingernails, that kind of thing there, which is a skeleton horde, all the paint to the top left. And now we come to the skin. I started off just using two colours, and then you'll see in a second, popped another couple of colours on there to really work on all the different colours across the skin at once. Find that works really well with contrast paints. They blend together really quite nicely when you're using them when they're wet. So the idea of here is that I'm going to work across all the skin areas with the four colours at the same time. So the four colours is Gulliver and Flesh, which I'm using on the kind of parts of the, I mean, is it a snail? Is it whatever it is, a slug? Onto the parts that are really the ground contact areas using the Gulliver and Flesh for one colour. Moving on to the Mantis Warrior Green into the sort of suckers and things that are coming out. Obviously it looks like it's the way it propels itself across the floor. Majos Purple into the split skin areas, as you just see me drop the first one on there, into the sort of split skin areas across here, so it looks like it's the gross sort of bleeding flesh underneath. And then finally the Plague Bearer flesh is going on the rest of the skin on top of the kind of slug as it goes round. So a real speed paint. You can see how sort of fast we're getting across this model here, so you know, not ridiculously quick, but we're covering a fairly good pattern. And again, the areas of the skin where it's a bit more detail on, it's going to take a bit longer. Some areas of the skin, you've got big areas of the skin here where there isn't really a great deal of broken flesh and that kind of stuff, so you know, faster or slower. As I said before, this whole model, Saturday evening it was done. I think about an hour on a Saturday night to get to this wash stage that we're going to see later. I did let it dry quite thoroughly, the contrast paints, before putting the wash on, so about an hour's painting, let it dry for a couple of hours just before bed last night. Didn't go out last night, far too much of that over Christmas. Bit of the wash stage you'll see, and then finishing it off this morning, and again doing the voiceover now at kind of 6 in the morning, just after finishing it. So probably total paint time an hour and a half at most, I would think. So it is a quick scheme. So you see here working on the skin, keeping those 4 pots of contrast paint open while I'm doing it, bouncing in between. Key part here as well, you'll see the paintbrush go off screen every now and then, and that's going into a water pot to clean it out because you don't want to mix these contrast paints in the pot. So mix them on the model, absolutely fine. Now if you get to an area that you've allowed to dry, it's not going to be the end of the world, but it definitely works better doing this with the wet paint as you're going, because then when you put the sort of next colour of contrast on at the sort of side or the edges or whatever, it just blends together that little bit in the sort of margins where they're touching, gives a couple of nice little different colours, and also makes sure you're not showing any of the kind of white base layer from underneath. So yeah, really do try and experiment doing this. Now there is the risk of knocking pots over. Never done it myself, but it can happen. I have knocked a wash over quite a long time ago, but do it carefully. Set up your water pot to one side where you're not going to have to reach over the paint. You can go to the side to get to your water pot and your bit of tissue to wipe the water off, that kind of thing, whatever. So think about how you're going to set your thing up stable. The other thing to also consider, if your room is insanely hot, you know, and these paints will dry out in the pots, so you might want to decant some into a thing if you want to do it that way as well. So we've gone over all of the skin areas. You will see some patches where you'll see on the chest it's still actually wet as I've moved on to the next stage, so this is being done quite quick. Now we're taking 2 of the same colours, so I'm not flashing the colours up the top left for these because they're exactly the same. So we're working with the Mantis Warriors Green and the Majos Purple and just doing the tentacles. So Mantis Warrior Green right near where the tentacles touch the skin or the skull. That's on maybe half the tentacle, like that, and then Major's Purple on the top part, and then again it will blend together, and you want it to do that because this is just some very, very fast wet blending. Now you see there, put the green on, put the purple on, it kind of starts blending together in the middle, then you can go back, put a little bit more green on, pull it into the purple, little bit more purple on, pull it into the green to make that blend sort of a bit more organic and not just in a straight line. Play with this, experiment with it. Contrast paints are a great way of kind of learning wet blending and really experimenting for the first time. And it just gives some really nice paint effects, because looking at the tentacles now, as I'm in the finished effect, there ends up being probably 5-6 different colours of purple on the tentacle, and the same sort of loads of different colours of green now, because it all tones together, blends, and I can even see when I'm looking at it now in my hand some kind of yellows and oranges even as these have mixed together. So yeah, have a play that you like, and remember the wash stage we're going to do will add some details to this. So we've gone through all of that, work through all the tentacles, and by magic we're onto the tongue. Pulling up a Volupus pink, quickly onto the tongue there, and this is the only time we're going to use Volupus pink in this scheme. You'll notice if you watched a lot of my videos, I am using the same sort of paints from across the army that I've already used, but in different areas of the model, and look, that ties visually the model in together and just makes it that nice bit easier. A tiny bit of gunmetal onto the collar kind of ring that's through his chin. I don't know what you would call that, but just with a standard normal paint there, and you can hang some Nurgle icons off that. I'm not going to though. Now onto a standard paint, onto a Vallejo deep yellow. Now you notice here the tentacles are still wet. You can hopefully see that on the video. So I'm now working on the areas of the model that has now dried off. Now be careful when you're doing this, because you don't want to get this paint anywhere that isn't meant to be a pustule. You can see I cleaned a bit off there. It's taking this deep yellow and going on to all the pustules across the model. Now there's some very big obvious ones across the chest. You can see them right there. You know you're going to aim and hit that. But one thing about this model is there are hundreds of little bumps and ridges and lumps and things across the model. Maybe not hundreds, there's a lot anyway. So as well as doing it on the kind of obvious kind of pustules on there, they have used these pustule things as kind of the join lines between the molds. You know, where the two parts of the model stick together, they've put little bumps and ridges there, and then across the rest of the skin there's lots of small indentations. Now not too time consuming to actually do. You can see there me just dotting around and picking up all the different ones. I didn't do every single dot and ridge, and actually with the light on this sort of video, you can't actually see where the yellow's going a lot of them. So at the end you'll hopefully get a little bit of a closer look, and I'll put some closer shots in so you can see sort of how many there are, but there are quite a lot. Get as many or a little of them as you want. I go for the larger ones and some of the small ones just to give a nice patterning to the skin. Now again, this is where I'd said I'd let the model dry for a couple of hours, and then right before finishing off last night, do the wash stage. This is a Vallejo sepia wash. Not a Vallejo, it's a Games Workshop sepia wash. I do use the Vallejo one a lot actually. The Vallejo one is dirtier, and for this scheme actually we don't want to dirty the model down too much, because this makes it look a little bit more demonic and adds a nice little shine to it. So you can use any sepia wash, but the Games Workshop one is the one I would recommend on this kind of stage. So you can see a nice thin layer. Don't let it pool up anywhere. We don't want it to pool up and go super dirty. So go back over the model afterwards, make sure you've not let it kind of go in any big volume. But then we let that, and then we let it thoroughly dry. Now, after it's dried overnight, this is kind of what we get. A nice little shimmery sheen to it, because there's a slight kind of shininess to that Vallejo sepia wash, but it's gone to all the gaps and cracks. I like how it's sunk together models. And really, you don't have to do a great deal more on top of this. I'm going to do some tiny final details. So taking a Vallejo bone white and just going over the kind of horns. I don't actually do the claws or anything, but just the horns, just to bring it up a little bit, because it's darkened it down, I think, a little bit too much. I don't do anything with any of the yellow other than on the eyeball, because I want the eyeball to be a little bit more vibrant. We're going to do something else shortly with the other bits. So a little bit yellow there. And again, you saw I dropped it into a crack I didn't want it in. Clean brush, wipe it off. Drop an eyeball in with a bit of black, just more of a slit eyeball. So rather than being a circle, a bit like a cat or a snake kind of has, just to, again, give it that little bit of otherworldly difference. And then you really are finished with the paint scheme. Now at this point, I'm going to go off, varnish the model, and then do some final touches. And here are the final touches. So the model's been varnished with Munitor and varnish. Takes a little bit of the shine down, also protects it during a gaming figure. And this is, after all, you know, for gaming. And what it does is, if you did this stage, the Nurgle's rot we're doing now, before the varnish would take that shine off. So we've matted down most of the rest of the model, but then we're allowing it now to have the Nurgle's rot, bit of a shine. Nurgle's rot is your friend if you're a demon player or Nurgle player, anything like that, because not only does it add that level of detail of this kind of pus and gunk coming out of these pustules and stuff, it also enables you, if you've made a mistake, just put the Nurgle's rot over it and you'll be all good. So yeah, putting it around, various little details, and now a closer up view so you can get a bit more of an idea about what the skin really looks like in kind of reality. Never quite comes off on camera properly. I really do need to upgrade my stuff at some point. But there we go, really good addition to the army. Hope you liked that. If you did, like, comment, subscribe, and I will see you back here on another video.